each letter in LGBTQIA2 spirit. And before I get going, I did not think that I would have to start saying this at less than 200 subscribers, but if you feel like you need to say mean things to me in the comment section, don't. On past videos, I have left them up. I will not be doing that in the future. Today's video is on trans and non-binary book recommendations, and if you feel like you need to say anything negative or transphobic, mine is not the channel for you. Just move along. I would think that it would be obvious from the titles of my videos that this is not the place for queer hate, but apparently it still needs to be said. And that's all I'm going to say on that. Jumping into today's videos, if you've been watching the series, you know that I start with my non-fiction book recommendations, and today we're going to start with memoirs. So obviously, I have to talk about genderqueer. So, Genderqueer is a book that has been in the news quite a bit for attempts at challenging and banning this book. As usual, the grounds for challenging are that it is sexually explicit, which is patently ridiculous considering that the person who wrote it identifies as asexual. Not a group known for their, So, Maya Kobabe uses e-air pronouns. I hope that I'm pronouncing that correctly. To be honest, I've never actually heard other people say it out loud, so I don't know if it's e-air or e-air. Either way, A-A-E-R, goodness, are genderqueer, and their memoir is a graphic novel. I love graphic novels. This is established already on my channel. Love a graphic memoir. I think the art in it is lovely, and I think that this is the sort of book that could literally save lives if the right kids find it, because as much as conservatives would like to pretend otherwise, trans and non-binary children exist, and they know it. And if you don't give them the language to express it, it's not going to make them cis, it's just going to make them miserable. So genderqueer. Love this book. Continuing on with memoirs. Page Boy by Elliot Page. So this just came out on the 6th. I pre-ordered my copy, and I wanted absolutely nothing more than to sit down and immediately devour it all in one sitting. Unfortunately, tragically, I am an adult, and I do have a job, a full-time job, and I've been working a lot of overtime lately, so it took me like 3 days to read instead, but I really liked the book. My biggest criticisms are, I hate the cover. The black and the white and the memoir on the side, it's just too stark for me. The red is like there's just too much contrast going on. If they had extended the red for the whole cover, and if they got rid of these, I think it would be so much better. But, art critiques aside, the chaotic, and the writing gets a little crude in places. And I think that that is done very intentionally. Elliot Page is addressing not just their transition, but also what it was like to be working as an actor in Hollywood before coming out as any kind of queer at all, and how very difficult that was for them, and they experienced some truly awful things. Definitely check content warnings for this one because it gets heavy. And I think that, to me, it's a book with a happy ending. That Elliot Page could come out and be living his best life now. But there's some shit to shovel in the meantime. And I think that the chaoticness of the writing style is matched by the chaos that he was experiencing emotionally going through all of this. So, if you haven't had the chance, definitely check this out. And our final memoir suggestion, The Disordered Cosmos, A Journey into Dark Matter, Space-Time, and Dreams Deferred by Chanda Prescott-Weinstein. So I am including this book not because it's about gender, because it's really not. I am including it because Chanda Prescott-Weinstein does use they, them pronouns. They do identify as non-binary, and they are a black person working in the field of astrophysics, and this is more a discussion of astrophysics. The first chapter is all about particle science, and is totally the hardest chapter to get through because I do not have a background in science. I haven't taken a physics class since the 9th grade, which might have been more than 20 years ago by now. Oh gosh. Sorry, I just had a moment of realizing I'm getting old. Not really. So yes, it's been a while since I've taken a physics class. So the first chapter is all about physics. After that, it gets more into feminism and gender and racial politics as part of the scientific community. And it's really an excellent book with a stunningly beautiful cover. So I do highly recommend this book if you are at all interested in physics in specific, science as a field in general, and what scientists can do to make a safer environment for people that are not cishet white men. Okay, so next we have Transgender History by Susan Stryker. This is the second edition of the book. The first edition came out in 2008. The second edition came out in 2017. Obviously, a lot is happening right now with transgender rights and people trying to take away those rights. And so Susan Stryker did add one more chapter to this book to kind of start to address transgender rights under Trump. But since it came out in 2017, there's a lot still happening, and it's only getting worse. Yay. So, this book was absolutely fascinating. It is specifically looking at the history of transgender people and rights in the United States. There's a little tiny brief bit about Germany because one of the biggest advocates for transgender rights initially in the United States was a German Jew who immigrated as a result of World War II. And he was not transgender himself. He was, however, gay. And I think that he just had enough transgender friends that he had a background in medicine, and so he just wanted to help, which is a story that we love, because honestly, even though it's LGBTQIA2 spirit now, that has not always been the case. It started off as just GLB, and trans people faced as much and sometimes even more opposition from especially members of the lesbian community. And some of that is probably that trans men can pass much more easily than trans women can, and trans women were more likely to identify as feminists and part of the radical feminist movement. And I use that term in this case not meaning feminists with radical ideology, but like the specific radical feminist movement, which advocated for, among other things, a complete rejection of all things male and a lesbian lifestyle. And those radical feminists are where we get the term TERF, meaning trans exclusionary radical feminist. A lot of the lesbians of that time did not believe that trans women were women, as we continue to see today. And so I'm just going to really briefly say, if that's a topic that's at all interesting to you, women's liberation, feminist writings that inspired a revolution and still can. This is a collection of essays from second wave feminism, and it does deal extensively with radical feminist ideology. So if what I'm saying is new to you, I do totally recommend Transgender History, and this is an interesting companion read if you are looking for more feminist history in general. It does not have anything to say about transgender people in it, though. That's just this one. And this does make reference to many of the people that have essays in women's liberation. But yeah, very accessible for a history book. It only took me 2 days to read the whole thing. It's pretty good, pretty interesting, and pretty easy for history, which I know can be, for some people, as intimidating a subject as physics is for me. So moving on to poetry. Because it's me, I can't not talk about poetry. I did talk about Homie in my gay book recommendation video, but Danez Smith does use they, them pronouns and does identify as non-binary, so they do belong in this video just as much as they did in that one. And some books I'm including in more than one book recommendation video, some I'm only talking about once. There's no rhyme or reason as to which ones I'm picking. I did really, really like this collection of poetry, though. It's just lovely. It's lovely. Check it out. If you are at all into poetry, you will like Homie. The next one that I have is Your Wound, My Garden by Alok V. Menon. I hope I'm pronouncing their name correctly. This one, if you watch Queer Eye, or specifically if you watched Jonathan Van Ness's Netflix show Getting Curious, then you will have seen Alok before. They've also been on Jonathan's podcast. So I actually bought this on Instagram from them, because when I had an Instagram, I did follow them. I do not have an Instagram anymore. So darn, no more targeted ads. But for real, I do occasionally wonder if I'm missing out on books and authors that I would otherwise not find. because this is independently published. And it is, again, it's just a beautiful collection of poetry dealing with gender and identity and chronic illness also. And checking my computer to see if I had any other. It fell asleep. Oh no. Wake up, computer. We're here to make people fall asleep, not computers. Oh, yes, okay. So the last book that I wanted to talk about is How to They Them, and it is also a graphic novel style book. Also a little bit memoir-y, but more of a it's a little bit memoir, it's a little bit self-help. It's altogether adorable. It was hilarious. It made me laugh out loud. I got it from the library, and I think it only took me like an hour to read, but it was like a delightful how to they them. And I kind of picked it up as a joke because I do use they them pronouns. Actually, I will use any pronoun that people want to apply to me. I prefer they them, and then he, and then she. But I do use all of them. So, aside from that, How Do They Them was really fun, and I would definitely recommend it if you are non-binary, but I would highly recommend it if you are cisgender too, because it will help you understand a little bit more why they, them is perfectly grammatically correct. Alright, so moving on to our young adult recommendations, but staying with comic books. Magical Boy Volume 1 and Volume 2, and this is by The Cow, who I got to meet at Emerald City Comic Con, and who is an absolutely lovely person, and who signed my book for me. I adore these books. Absolutely adore them. You can also read Magical Boy online through the Tapas app. It does cost money, but probably less money than buying the physical book. Magical Boy is the story of Max, who is a transgender teen, young adult, and Max is not out to his family yet. He is out to his best friend, and on his birthday he decides that this is the moment, he's gonna tell his family, all that. But it turns out it's also the moment that his mother is going to tell them that they come from a long line of magical girls. And his mom expects him to be the next one in line. And of course that is a problem for Max because Max is not a girl. And so we have Magical Boy instead. And it's just, and I really love the cover for this one because we can see Max really starting to come into his own and his powers on this. But this is the story of Max finding out, it's a self-discovery story, it's a coming out story, it's a saving the world story. It's just an absolute delight. Volume 1 ends on a cliffhanger. So if you are, what I would do personally is read the first couple on Tapas for free, and then if you like it, just commit to reading them all, because you're not going to be happy if you read only Volume 1. My only criticism for these books is that sometimes it's hard to tell who the speech bubble is pointing to. Other than that, they are just like a queer delight. I love them. I love them so much. So, speaking of things I love, I don't typically read a lot of young adult. However, I do adore Rick Riordan. I found Percy Jackson when I was already in college, and I wish that he had been around when I was much younger, because I would have been all about becoming one of Artemis's handmaidens instead of wishing that I could go to the school that shall not be named, that was created by the turf we no longer like. And Rick Riordan has a whole universe, like, that takes place in the same Percy Jackson universe, and my favorites are actually the Magnus Chase books, and in part because starting in book 2, which is The Hammer of Thor, and Magnus Chase is just a trilogy, we have a character, Alex, and Alex is genderqueer. Alex uses either she or he pronouns, and it depends on Alex's mood in the moment. And because I cannot tell what Alex's mood might be at any moment, I'm trying to kind of avoid using pronouns because Alex very specifically does not use they, them. And I love it. My gender identity tends to be kind of that, like, sometimes I'm a boy, sometimes I'm a girl, sometimes I'm neither, which is where Alex does not live, but that, like, switching between the two was very identifiable for me, and so I just adore Alex as a character, and I really like these books. I do love a Norse mythology retelling, which is what this is, and we have talked about that and my preference for it previously, so I'm just gonna move along. Of course, I cannot talk about trans representation in young adult books without talking about Cemetery Boys. I think absolutely everybody knows that this book exists at this point. I probably don't have anything new to add to the conversation other than that I loved Cemetery Boys. I love Aiden Thomas in general. I have a signed copy of Lost in the Neverwoods downstairs too. And I don't think I need to really belabor this because I think everybody knows what Cemetery Boys is, but on the very off chance that you don't, Cemetery Boys is a story about specifically Mexican witches, and they can talk to the dead, and there's ghosts. And I know that I said in my gay book recommendation that I don't like a ghost love story, and that remains true. But there are exceptions, and this is one of them. Because I liked the way that it was done. I thought it was good. The last young adult book that I want to mention, I have 2 more on my list actually. One is The Witch King by H.E. Hedgemon. I think I should have looked that up before I started, but I did not, and it's not written down, so I'm just gonna assume I'm right. And that one is also the story of a trans man, and it's a little bit on the younger side in my opinion. It's not a favorite for me, but I liked it well enough. I haven't read the second one yet though, so it's kind of on my list of books that I want to buy. I have it on the list that says books I will purchase when I have more space, which is like the lowest priority because I do keep buying more books, and now I'm just like stacking them horizontally because I have a problem. And the last young adult recommendation is Pet by Koike Emezi. Pet is one that I enjoyed the story. I do think that it reads a little young, and I do find that it is very unsubtle, which is fine. It's just not always my cup of tea. Pet is essentially the story of a young trans girl. She lives in a sort of utopian appearing society, fantasy where all of the monsters have been defeated, but Pet accidentally brings to life a monster hunter, and if there is a monster hunter, there must be a monster. So it maybe turns out that her utopian society isn't quite as ideal as it seems. And shifting to adult book recommendations, starting with romance. I did talk about love and other disasters in my bisexual recommendations video because one of our characters does identify as bisexual, the other one does identify as non-binary. Their non-binariness does play a significant role in the story. This is a reality TV food competition romance. I love a food story, so this is a definite winner for me. I would highly recommend. The other romance recommendation that I have is A Lady for a Duke by Alexis Hall. So I do have some reservations with this one. I liked the characters, but I do still think that the story drags a little in the middle, and it's probably like 100 to 150 pages longer than it really needs to be. But I personally also prefer my romances like on the short side because I want to be able to read them in a day and move on. The other issue that I have with A Lady for a Duke is that our cis male love interest is a little too pushy for my comfort. Every time that our trans character expresses fear or reservation or says that, this is something that could put me in danger, I think that our cis character discounts that too quickly and pushes too hard, and that does bother me the whole time that I'm reading it. So I just want to put that caveat. I do still like the characters. I cannot remember any of their names, and I don't have a physical copy to look them up. I like Alexis Hall in general. If you are used to the Alexis Hall of boyfriend material and husband material, though, you should also know that A Lady for a Duke is historical fiction and not as humorous. It's a much more serious book. Okay, I have talked about Tome of Sand on my channel before as well. This one is in my video about books that I think will become a favorite, but I don't call something a favorite until I've read it more than once. And this one is a little bit chunky, and I just read it in January, so it's not quite time for a reread yet. But the writing style in this book it's just so beautiful. It's so beautiful. So this is Tomb of Sand by Geetanjali Shri. It is translated by Daisy Rockwell. It is originally written in Hindi. Geetanjali Shri is from India. The book is about partition, the partition between India and Pakistan, which is an ongoing political issue for both countries. And in this, we follow Ma, who is in her 80s. She is recently widowed, and after coming out of a deep depression, she decides that she wants to start living life anew. And one of the things that she wants to do is go to Pakistan. And she travels with her daughter. Before that moment, she moves from her son's house into her daughter's house. And her daughter is very used to thinking of herself as the liberal bohemian feminist, and is very surprised to find that there's more to her mother than meets the eye, including the fact that Ma has a lovely friendship with a trans woman named Rosie. And we do get to see a little bit of what life is like for Rosie. are sad moments in this book, especially pertaining to Rosie, but I still want to recommend this book because it is lovely. This book is 800 pages of poetry, is what it is. It's such a delight. And if you are someone who can just sink into the beauty of language, you will really like this, and you will be absolutely flabbergasted and impressed by the amazing job of translating this book. And another piece of contemporary trans literature is Detransition Baby. Now, I did not particularly enjoy my reading experience with this book, and most of that is because it is so true to the queer community as I experienced it, that it was actually very upsetting for me. When I was in college, was very much hooked into my local queer community, and I was very much treated poorly when I started dating a man, despite the fact that I was out as pansexual. And I felt like I kind of got kicked out of that queer community. And Detransition Baby included all of the most wonderful parts of the queer community, all of the reasons that I was proud to be a part of it, and, I deeply, deeply loved my friends. But there can be some dark sides there, and Detransition Baby also addresses a lot of that in a very true-to-life way. So if that is something that sounds interesting to you, it is a really good book, just not entirely up my alley, which is also how I felt about Nevada by Imogen Binnie. Now, this is one that I actually just finished yesterday. I picked it up because it is described as a cult classic of trans literature and one of the most beloved cult novels of our time and a landmark of trans literature. So, I think my issue with this book is that it's kind of sold as a trans version of the Great American Road Trip novel, which to me would involve time spent on a road trip. And instead, we have a 250-page book. We spend 150 pages in New York, and then we jump to Nevada, and we don't actually get any of the road trip, and the road trip was the part that I wanted. So I was disappointed in that. I was expecting a road trip. It is not a road trip. It is an identity crisis, a trans woman losing their girlfriend and their job and running away, which is fine, but it's a different novel than what I was expecting going into it. So I think it's an adjust your expectations. I did like the writing style. There is no plot. This is a 100% character-driven novel, and you are inside the head of someone who spends a lot of time thinking about themselves and their transness, which feels like a very true-to-life experience. You get a lot of what it feels like to have gender dysphoria, what it feels like to be trans. One of the things that I really appreciated is that Maria, our main character, did not realize that they were trans as a baby. They did not realize it until they were in their 20s. And I love that because I do think that we need more representation of trans people who didn't grow up insisting that they were a gender other than the one assigned at birth. I think that it's a completely valid trans experience to realize it in your 20s or 30s or 40s or 50s. there is no one right way to be trans, and this book really emphasizes that that is true. Okay. I was a little hesitant to mention this next book. I'm gonna do it. It feels like it might be a spoiler. I'm gonna keep this super vague. Lone Women by Victor LaValle. This is going to be on one of my top 5 slots for best books I've read this year. I loved this book. One of the characters is trans. I will not tell you which one because it would be a spoiler, but it is important to the story. This is the story of women in Montana, specifically a black woman moving from California to Montana in the wake of her parents' death, and she is carrying a mysterious trunk. And saying anything more than that feels like it's going to get into spoiler territory, and so I won't. I will just say Lone Women by Victor LaValle is absolutely brilliant, and you should check it out if you are at all interested in historical fiction, or if you like horror or fantasy. Sticking with kind of the horror category, Heart Haunt Havoc by Freydis Moon. So this is a book with one trans character and one non-binary character, written by a non-binary person. This is a novella. Nice and short and sweet. It is a horror. It is a haunted house situation. Our trans man is an exorcist out of the Catholic tradition, which I absolutely loved because I was raised Catholic. And there is also an erotic element. We have a bruja, a Mexican non-binary character. It's hard to think of what else I could say without spoiling this one. Also, it is independently published. It is a delight. I like that it's a novella, but I also wanted it to be longer because I didn't want to be done with it yet. Okay. Next, I have Frankenstein by Jeanette Winterson. Jeanette Winterson is a lesbian. Our main character, however, is a trans man. This is a Frankenstein retelling, a modernized version. It is really good. I really like this one. There are content warnings. Look them up if you're a content warning person. But it's just delightfully creepy, as any Frankenstein retelling should be. And then in contrast to that, I have Unwieldy Creatures by Addie Sai. This is also a Frankenstein retelling. This one is non-binary, queer as all get out, and also Asian influenced. We have a Malaysian and a Chinese character, and I love it for the representation. I really liked elements of it. I ultimately did not like the ending. However, I am still going to recommend this book because this was a feminist book club pick, and I was absolutely in the minority on not particularly liking the ending. So I think that this is still a book that's going to have wide appeal, and I will still recommend it despite the fact that I did not, personally absolutely love it. Because just because a book isn't for me doesn't mean it's a bad book. It just means it wasn't personally for me. And my last, fantasy book that I want to recommend, and this is, much more pure fantasy than all of the rest of those were kind of fantasy horror. The Empress of Salt and Fortune by Nevo. That is the first book in the Hills Cycle series of novellas. I have not purchased it yet because I kind of resent spending $20 for a novella, but that's neither here nor there. I will buy it eventually, and the rest of the books in the cycle. I believe there are 4 out now, or at least 3, and the 4th one is coming very soon. I have been told you can read them in any order. The main character is non-binary. The books have just a generally very queer feeling to them. Not surprising, considering that Nevo is also the author that brought us the Siren Queen. But they're just really lovely. I've only read the first one so far because my library only had the first one, which is why I need to just suck it up and buy them all. So I will do that eventually. Okay, so moving on to nonfiction. I'm going to do my list in opposite order so that I can end with my favorites. So, I just realized I said moving on to nonfiction. Moving on to science fiction. The first book I want to talk about is The Light from Uncommon Stars. And the author's name just completely fled my mind. So, The Light from Uncommon Stars is a little bit of a mashup of Faustian bargain, violin prodigy, hint of food novel, and traditional science fiction with aliens. And for me personally, the mashup didn't quite work. We have basically 3 main characters. One is a Japanese violin teacher who has made a deal with the devil. She has sold her soul. Now, to get her soul back, she has to give the devil 7 more souls. And I used to play violin. I played violin all through elementary, junior, and high school. I really wanted to be a concert violinist. Unfortunately, I shredded my wrists, which is why I have my treble clef and bass clef tattoos. So I physically could not keep playing. I had to stop. But I still absolutely adore classical music. I love... Ooh, the sun is setting and my light is getting weird. Well, okay, I'm just gonna look a little yellow for the rest of the video. Yeah, I love the violin. I love classical music. I was really excited for this book. I wanted it to just be like... What didn't work for me is that our violin teacher gets involved in a relationship with our alien woman, and I did not buy that relationship. It just didn't feel right. Ooh. There we go. That's a little better. Okay. It didn't feel like the alien character actually cared at all about our violin teacher. So I had a hard time with that. But the last character in the book is our violin student, who is a trans girl who ran away from home because of violence in her home, related especially to her being trans. And it's just, I really liked that part of the story. I really liked the Faustian bargain, the violin teacher aspects. It everybody else that I follow on BookTube who has read the book has loved it. So clearly, I'm the one that's wrong. Next one that I want to recommend is The Echo Wife by Sarah Gailey. Now, this book is like domestic thriller. It's kind of got queer overtones in that it has like found family-ish elements. It's definitely a non-traditional family that gets formed by the end, but nothing in it is explicitly queer or trans. I'm mostly bringing it up because Sarah Gailey is non-binary, so I think that they do fit in a non-binary book recommendation video. But if you like domestic thrillers with sci-fi elements, this one is a cloning domestic thriller, and I absolutely loved it. You know, asking the right questions about like ethical cloning and personhood, with just, you know, a smattering of murder on top. Alright, and the last two. A Psalm for the Wild-Built and A Prayer for the Crown-Shy. If you have been on my channel before, then you know that I love Becky Chambers. Absolutely adore her work. And I especially love the Monk and Robot series. Our main character, our T-Monk, is non-binary, uses they, them pronouns. I cannot for the life of me remember their name. I'm so bad with names, it's embarrassing, really. Dex. Okay, so Dex. Oh dang, what's the robot's name? Mosscap. Okay, I knew it was named after a mushroom, but I couldn't remember. So Dex uses they, them pronouns. Mosscap actually uses it because Mosscap thinks of itself as an object because Mosscap is a robot. It really raises interesting questions of like personhood and what do people need, and it's just these books are so sweet, like unbelievably sweet, very post-apocalyptic utopian, which I did not know was a category, but apparently it is because that's what these are. They're just so feel good, so cozy, so wonderful, while still doing what I think sci-fi is meant to do, which is make us question technology and our role in the environment and what is human responsibility, and just they're just so good. Alright, so those are my book recommendations for books with trans and non-binary characters or written by trans or non-binary authors. If you've read any of these, let me know what you thought of them in the comments. If you have any recommendations for me, I am always happy to hear them. Always happy to get more queer books in my life, so leave those in the comments too. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't